I think we need a better account of what it means to participate in a political party or belong to a political party than we've often been given. I don't think we need to get to the point where we refuse to identify with a party. I think that can be, especially in local contexts, like local Republican, local Democratic politics can be quite different. It's obviously influenced by the national level, but it can be quite different at a local level, which is why you've seen some wins in places that are surprising. Like there are states where Democrats or Republicans, depending on the, sway of the state, can win at the local level because they trust the local party, but they can't win at the national level because they know that the national party is going to, get them involved in things they don't want to get involved into. So I would just say, I would be hesitant to say fully we don't associate or identify with political parties. But I take his point that the options given to us most of the time are to associate with a political party is to give complete loyalty and give over your sense of identity and community to it.
So you wouldn't necessarily advocate to someone, you have got a class of 18-year-olds sitting in front of you asking about a Christian and politics, Caitlin Shess. I don't know if that
happens sometimes.
I don't know if that's ever happened. And they say, should we associate with a political party today? You would say, no, you're Bonhoeffer in 1923, no parties.
I would say, are we talking about you getting involved in local politics? That might make sense. You're going to have to get some wisdom from your local community and from the people who are involved in politics locally to you. If what we're talking about is, should I associate as a part of my identity on social media with a particular party as someone who's not really involved in actual politics, I don't think that's necessary. And that's a lot of the model we've been given. I think the question is very different for people who are going to be robustly involved in politics, actually involved, not just consuming political media, but involved in local politics, than people who are just going to use this as a label to filter things that, like the news they receive and the way they identify online. Those are two very different questions.
How do you know, though, because right now, today, particularly on the Republican side, moderates are just being spat out. And go back 20,
both sides.
Well, go back 20, 30 years, and it was moderates being spat out of the Democratic Party over issues like abortion. Today, it's moderates being spat out of the Republican Party simply because of a lack of fealty to Donald Trump, personality-driven expulsion. So when you see that happening, at least at the national level, I guess it's not as much happening locally, doesn't that tell you you're going to have a hard time moderating a party that is rejecting all attempts at moderation?
I mean, that's why if it's a group of Christian 18-year-olds, most of them, if they are thinking about getting involved in politics, and I'm talking to students at CCCU schools that are like, I want to go into politics professionally. If some of them are going to run for local office, that's a very different question than like, how are you going to do this at the national level? And I think sometimes we have some hopelessness about the parties because of the information we're getting at the national level, which I totally understand. But there doesn't seem to be a great alternative currently to just saying like, yeah, I want really faithful, energetic, Christian college students to go out and after they graduate, be involved in local politics, whether they're Democrats or Republicans. I think that call me crazy, like at least that's a good thing, I think, for their communities.
I think there's also, though, the reality that our political parties are getting weaker and weaker. And
yeah, true.
I just heard Ezra Klein talking about, was the race in Nebraska this past year where an independent, very red state, an independent ran who probably more aligned with the Democratic Party in policies, but did not run as a Democrat, ran as an independent and almost won. And speculating that we might see more and more candidates running in very blue or very red states as independents.
Disassociating.
Right, because the other political party's brand is so toxic in that place that you can't get far if you're associated with them. So it actually, whereas party affiliation used to be a huge asset because you had all the resources of the party behind you, now it's a liability and you're better off being independent, which may open the door for more independently minded Christians of conviction to run for office in different parts of the country based on a platform that is not beholden to one party or another, which I think would be a really good thing, but we'll see.
So Miller and Renew say a confessing church today in America needs a robust theology of civic engagement that teaches the moral good of Republican government, the rule of law, and constitutionalism. It would teach respect for pluralism, anti-utopianism, and the wisdom that comes from learning from the history of totalizing political religions. It would teach critical detachment from parties coupled with selective and narrow cooperation with them. Yes, no, Caitlin, Chess.
She put her hands up like she
I know
was
the
cheering.
early part,
Yes.
the early
Well,
part, the latter part.
Here's what's exciting to me about this, and this is the part of the piece that I again really agree with. And critical detachment is fine. I don't want to say let's not be involved in parties at all. But to Skye's point a moment ago of like, who knows what's going to happen with the parties in the United States? I have said this on the show before. I will say it again. It is just crucial, I think, for us to move beyond not only kind of Band-Aid responses to whatever the newest political crisis is, but to the point of this piece, move beyond the kind of the drama of the kind of moral clarity of the moment. And I love the Barmen Declaration. I have it literally on the wall next to me. I think it's a beautiful theological statement. But I think they're correct to say there's a kind of high we can get from being in this political moment that is very heightened, where we feel like we have not only moral clarity, but moral authority to just sort of say, like, here's what's true, and it's counter to everything you believe. And some of us, there's a reason we constantly are going back to the Nazis and comparing everything to Hitler and comparing everything to the Nazis, because the drama of being the Bonhoeffer against the Nazis is intoxicating. And what we need, instead of the constant Band-Aid or the constant like clarion call of like, here's the Christian statement against everything that's going wrong, is the much smaller, slower, less dramatic, less exciting work of a political theology that not only gives us a sense of what it means to be a Christian in the world, what it means to honor government without giving it undue authority, the kind of formation, spiritual formation that people need to do this well. But the one thing I would say is sort of missing from this piece is a really robust sense of particular, not just policies, but ideas about how communities should function that Christians have received over the decades. We aren't without resources for not just thinking about kind of the values that we should hold generally or the character that we should have, but really good ideas about what matters in a community and how they should function well. And we should return to that kind of approach of saying we need that basic theological foundation. There might be crises that pop up that give us an opportunity to return to those basics and say, this is what's being threatened, this is our response. But just constantly responding with like, Jesus is Lord, so that means you shouldn't be a dictator. Jesus is Lord, that means tyranny is wrong, isn't going to give us the robust foundation of like, we actually have something to say about how human communities best function and the spiritual formation we need to be good citizens and neighbors. We're not going to do that if we're constantly swept up in the drama of responding with this clarion call to this moral moment that makes us feel more important than actually gives us something to do.
We need like civic discipleship.
Yes.